want to put on the chat that it starts? I don't think I put it on the chat. I'll put it in the email. That's where I put it. Okay. All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Brachas, Perek Vav. We're going to be learning Halacha Zayin, going through it again, and Halacha Ches, thus concluding this chapter of Ketzad Mevarchim. In the Oiz V'Hadar's edition, we're going to Daf Ayin, starting by Daf Samach Tes Amud Beis, by the Mishnah, and the Mishnah establishes the rule of Kol Shehu Iker, V'Imoi Tfeila, V'Varech Halo Iker, and you b'chlal don't make a bracha on the tefillah because the bracha on the ikar is poiter as a tefillah. We're going to learn in the new Mishnah Halacha Ches a machlokes tanoim regarding birchas hamazon. And even though nowadays we bench kishitas chachamim, we're going to learn the opinion of Rabban Gamliel and the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that actually the Rabbi Akiva is the extreme that whenever you eat something for your meal, even if you're eating vegetables, you have to make the proper birchas hamazon, as we will see inside the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to, and the Mishnah will also speak about the bracha over water, implying that if you don't drink water to quench your thirst, you don't make a bracha. And indeed, so we paskin. And we're going to have in the Gemara a phenomenal concept of shinui makoim, not literally the way we had it yesterday and 2 days ago, but we're going to have two ways of understanding our Gemara. When a person is drinking wine and then they bring out another wine. So we will clearly speak about the potential of the necessity of making the bracha hatoy v'hametiv. Okay, but there is going to be a way of learning the sugya, at least part of the sugya, that when you drink one wine and then a new wine is brought out, you make another boire pri hagafen. Why? Think about it. Because just like we learned yesterday, if you're Mashana Yomakim, you have to make another bracha. Having a new wine is tantamount to azat change, like a shinui makim, which will necessitate making a boire pri hagafen. And if we'll have time, we'll begin at least some words of introduction and maybe reading the first line in the 7th chapter. Shloisha sha'achlu ka'echad. Just speaking out now, one intro to the intro, that when you have at least 3 people that are eating together, and the word is together, as we'll speak out, then when it comes to birchas hamazon, not only are they mechuyev to bench, but they are mechuyev to invite each other for benching, right? Zimun means to invite. There is a machlokes, many rishonim, on one hand, the Ravid, the Hasagas to the Baal Hamoy, and many others are of the opinion that the zimun itself, right? Nevarech she'achalnu mishaloi. Let us. It's a we. Let's, and then everyone responds Baruch she'achalnu mishaloi. And if there's a minyan, you add God's name of Elikim. Nevarech Elikeinu she'achalnu mishaloi. So they hold that it's midoi raisa. You have the Ritva, the Meiri, the Ra'ah hold that zimun is midrabanan. And as we will begin learning our sugya, probably on Daf Ayin Beis, we'll get there soon. It will be mashma from the Yerushalmi that zimun itself is the oiraisa, and the topic will be about zimun. That will be the topic of the 7th chapter. We have more words of introduction that we will say, even if we don't begin the Perek, just to speak it out when we get there, God willing, soon on Daf Ayin Amud Beis. So let's start on Daf Samach Tes Amud Beis. Let's go through the Mishnah again. Hevioloi moliach batchila. Now the word batchila is something that we didn't speak out yesterday, and that's going to be very important to chopping, to getting the whole Gemara, the little Gemara, the big Gemara, the deep Gemara that we're going to have on the top of Daf Ayin, that the word batchila means initially, meaning that a person was having maliach as a pre-meal appetizer. And that's very important. In contrast to a person who's having a meal of fish, that is the meal. He's eating the salty fish because he wants to be satisfied, and he's washing. In that case, even though when you ate this fish, many people needed to eat in Yiddish a farbaisen with it. You needed to have the cracker with it. Or in the case of the Mishnah, you needed to have bread with it. We won't say that the bread is tafel. The only reason why, in the case of the Mishnah, bread with some very salted fish makes the fish into the iken and the bread into the tafel, we're not even going to repeat what we spoke from the Babli about Petes Genoisar. There was zero mention to this at all in the Yerushalmi. You're having salty fish. But since you're having it batchila means you're having it prior to eating the meal, you're not eating it to be satiated. You're eating it for your appetite to be opened. And this is an important halachic principle. No, it's my kavana of eating will determine a lot. So since it's only batchila, it's for opening up my appetite. And you don't need bread to open up your appetite. Adarabbi, even though you're not eating bread to open up your appetite, bread is masbiyah. Masha enkein, herring or any other type of salted fish was then for a time eaten pre-meal. So since the kavana is pre-meal and you're only having the bread not lahasbiyah but to help you eat the salt, for the salt not to be mazik your garain, that's why you mamish will not make the bracha over the bread at all. You only make the bracha of the maliach. In our Mishnah, the maliach is salted fish ashad. Upasi moy, bevarach only ala maliach upeiteras apas. Why? Because in this case, apas tfeilo loy. And indeed, says the Mishnah Zajac, kol shehu iker, ve'imay tfeila, whenever you're having two foods together, but they're not equal, one is the primary food, one is only the subordinate food, one is only the secondary food. Like in our case, one is serving the other. The bread is serving you, helping you eat more fish, or helping you eat the fish in a way where the fish won't make you feel uncomfortable. So then their halacha is, the rule is, now I have to say that even in the case of the Mishnah, you already are eating bread with the fish. Now that you begin the meal, now that you're going to go wash, of course you have to wash and make hamoitzi over the bread. Because then, now you're beginning the meal. You can't say, anyways, I'm eating bread. Doesn't go that way. The bread is considered tefela. Now that the bread becomes the ikir, now you have to make whatever you always have to do, which is natilas yadayim. You have to wash your hands, make the bracha natilas yadayim, and make the bracha of amutz. And now says the Gemara that Rab Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yoina's son, and this is indeed to explain the word of bat chila that we have in the Mishnah. Masni Yasa, our Mishnah, is only actually lamdu suudas malachim. In other words, in the earlier times, prior to people changing their eating habits. Why did people change their eating habits? Because melachim, it used to be that only when you're a melech, when you were from nobility, you knew that the ideal pre-meal appetizer is something sweet. That was something that melachim did. So if you were a king, if you were a prince, you had something sweet, and then you had the meal. No, but before the commoner got spoiled, like the malachim, like the kings, they would have salty as the pre-meal appetizer. And what the Gemara really means to emphasize is that when do we say that the pasas tafel is only if the maliach was not eaten to become satiated. Because the malachim, they knew, if you were nobility, you always knew, salty is already going to satiate. If you want to open up your appetite, sweet. And by the way, that's certainly true for diabetics. When people eat a lot of sweet, right? Maybe kids, they get hyper, but then the hyper drops. Then you need koyach. Masha'enke in our stomach, for God forbid, if a person doesn't have enough food, we all know that. So you add salt, add spices, you'll be satisfied with less. Okay, so actually, in other words, the salty fish was not part of the meal. Everyone used to have a pre-meal appetizer, everyone then. But Elamah, they didn't know that it's even better to have something sweet. And therefore, it's only another detail. The other detail is that even when you're having the salt as a pre-meal appetizer, if your kavana of having the bread is also because I'm so hungry, I cannot wait until the meal. I'm already hungry. And therefore, let me chaparai and have some bread. Then, even though you're eating the maliach as a pre-meal appetizer, you are eating the pas lahasbiyah. You also, it won't be tough. It's only you are eating pre-meal. Number two, you don't want to eat, become satisfied. You're having the opposite problem. Your problem is that you're not hungry enough for the meal. You want to open up your appetite. Oh, for that, you had maliach. You can't eat maliach without something. You need just the bread, just to help you swallow it without it hurting your throat. And when would that be? They opened up the appetite, they would have something sweet. Right? They would have a sweet fruit. Like in the Bavli, it's peres genoisa. Then you're having the meal. Now, in the meal, you want to have fish, and the fish is salty. So even though you need the bread for the fish, can't eat such salty bread with fish without bread. I get that, but you're not eating it as a pre-meal. Once you're eating the su'uda, if the moliach is l'shem su'uda, then the bread is zicher l'su'uda. It's part of the su'uda. Then loy bida. And here it's going to flip. Loy bida means not only do we not have the rule of the Mishnah, but what will be the rule? The rule will be like we had in the previous Mishnah. Not like one version, Bishitas Beishamai, the Maskanan Beishamai, that Hamoitzi covers everything that's part of the meal. You only wash, you make Hamoitzi, and you're good. And now the Gemara is going to speak about other types of salty foods. According to some, there are even other types of salty fish. In other words, such a big chiddush to say that you're having moliach and bread, in the case of the Mishnah, that you don't make a bracha over the bread, we're really limiting it. So you would think if it's so limiting, it's only like the Gemara began, it's only Achalalamdu Sudas Malachim, Efsher God, it's only for Maliach. Maliach is one type of very salty fish. Here we will broaden it. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmeh, B'Shem Rav, that pita upedur. Pita is bread. Pedur, again, what pedur is, not clear, but it is a certain other type of salty fish. So the din is that when it's eaten as a pre-meal appetizer, you only make the bracha on the pedur and not on the bread. And here again, the Gemara has to clarify. That's only b'makayim sh'osim es ha-pedur ikar. Avo b'makayim she'ein oinen es ha-pedur ikar, because why would the pedur not be ikar? Because it's not pre-meal. You're eating it as part of the meal. You're beginning the meal with it. Then again, loy bida. This ruling does not apply. Yes, you have to make a bracha dafka on the hamoitzi as we had by the moliach. And now a third type of food that sometimes was eaten as a pre-meal appetizer, Rab Simon, the Shem Rab Lakish, from Lakish, says shekizmei upitam. I just want to lahoir that by Rav it was pita came first, pita upedur, right? What's the seder here? Not pita and shekizmei. I don't know why he's doing that, but Azoy does. Shekizmei upita. And here again, we have to clarify the same thing. That's only b'makam she'osim es shekizmei ikar. Aval b'makam she'ein osim es shekizmei ikar. Then loy b'da. All of these cases are the same. On one hand, we don't limit the chiddush of maliach only to maliach fish. There are other pre-meal, mitzat sheni. All of those pre-meals were at times eaten during the meal, and then everything changes. And then the bracha has to be made over the bread. Okay. Atkan. Mishnah Zayin, and now we're beginning the final Mishnah of this Perek, Mishnah Ches, the final Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Ochal, if a person is eating He'enim, right, figs, Anavim, grapes, Vimoinin, pomegranates, why the Mishnah changed the Seder of the Pasuk, I don't know, right, Eretz Chito So'eda V'gefen Ute'ena V'rimoin, Kasha, not Gefen, right, it's Anavim. But anyways, Azoy does. And by the way, the Mishnah does not mean to exclude not the Zayah Shemen, nor to exclude the Dvash, the dates. No, it means if you will eat any of the Shivas Haminim and you became satisfied because this is your meal, you have to make the proper Birchas Hamazon, which is referred to as the Shalosh Brachos. Last we said, even though really we already had when the Mishnah was written, not when Gamliel said the words, the fourth bracha of Hatoy v'Hameitiv, right? Because that was after the miracle, the Golus miracle, Shaloi Hisvichu and Shenitan Lekvura. But we always refer it to the Birchas Hamazon as Shalosh Brachas because the three are called Dorais and the fourth is called Medivrei Soifrim. Divrei Rabban Gamliel. Look inside the Charedim, and the Charedim says that everything that we're reading right now in the first Charedim of the Mishnah is Befarish Lo Harav Ovadia. In other words, he's quoting the words of the Rav Bartanura that we refer to Harav Ovadia that way. And this is what he says. Anything that's from Shivas Aminim. Why? Because the Sfira Leila Rabbi Gamliel. That when it says in Pashas Ekev, it's not only going on bread. Ella, it's going on all of the Shivas Aminim. Achal Shivas Aminim. Hamuskarim Elba Pasha. Then you got to make Birchas Hamazon. Now the Bartanura adds another detail, and that is that in this pasuk that we are quoting, right? It's all there in Ekev, right? We read this even Mondays and Thursdays. We read all the way up until there. After the Torah enumerates all of the seven, then the Torah says V'yachalt v'zod yerachta. What does it say later? It says Uveirachta, right? Uveirachta es Hashem Elokecha ala oretz hateva asher nasan lach. That this pasuk is merames to make all the three brachas. Uveirachta goes to Birchas Hazon. Al haaretz Birchas haaretz. Hatoiva b'nei Yerushalmi. Why is b'nei Yerushalmi called good? Because the Beis Hamikdash har hatoiv azeh. So we have in Bavli Daf Mem Dalet. So that is a sheet of Rabbi Gamliel. Keep your finger in the Charedim. Let's go back here to inside of the Mishnah. And now v'chachamim oimrim bracha achas. That if it's anything other than having a su'uda, even if you're having chita v'sa'ira, but you're having it in the way where it's only machayiv you to make a mazoinus, then you only make the what? The bracha achas. What's the bracha achas? Says the Charedim, says the Bartanura, me'ein shalish brachos, im anavim, te'enim, v'rimoinim, zeisem u'tomarim, achal. If it's the 5 of the 7, then mevarach alo eitz val priya eitz. And if you're living in Eretz Yisrael, you're choisem al haaretz v'al peiros sell. Ubrachazu atzma mevarach ala yayin. The only difference will be el shepeseach al hagefim al pri hagefim. Now, what's very interesting when the Bartanura is saying el shepeseach al hagefim, I don't think he means to say that you're not choisem al haaretz v'al pri hagefim. I don't think he means to say that. Because he thinks it for given that we know the rules of brachas, you open up, you close it, and you open it. There's a certain symmetry that has to be there. He means that the bulk of the bracha is the same. And instead of saying al eitz al priya eitz, you say al mechav al kalkala. And v'choisem al aretz al mechia. Now, why does he have to say the? Because we're not choisem al haaretz v'al mechia v'al kalkala. I think that's why he has to say it. Mashenkin by al gefen al gefa priya baruch Hashem al gefa priya gef. Keep your finger inside the chared. Now you have the third opinion in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva Oimer, afilu ochal shelek. Even if you're having a vegetable, cooked vegetable, and just as in a mushroom, that's even clearer that we had a few daf ago. That kruv we learned is mamash masbiyat zon. Zon, it nourishes, but that's the Mishnah is not saying only a kruv, only a cabbage. If you are having a vegetable, kaminig the people nowadays, and that is your meal, you go to a pizza station and you're smarter. You're not going to order pizza and gain weight. You're going to order their amazing salad, but that's your meal. Then no, we're speaking about vegetables. Listen to the Chachamim mevarech aleph shalish brachos. Why? Because according to Rabbi Akiva, when it says v'yachalta v'savata, means that my da'achal, whatever you eat. And says the Charedim, says the Bartanura, that v'halacha kachachamim she'ein mevarchem shalosh brachas el halechem v'al shivas haminim bracha achas me'in shalosh. Right? Al kol sharad dvarim kol, not the way we had it in the times of the Yerushalmi in the beginning. There's the earlier times of the Amoraim that even burning nefashos was not always made. No, now on everything you make a burning nefashos rabbis v'chesroim. Now the Charedim, the Bartanura goes into a very important detail that we already spoke at. The word v'chesroinan we didn't have inside the Yerushalmi. We explained it then, but chesroinan is in reference to the things that we are lacking. Now there are two things. There's food that I lack, which means if I won't eat it, I'm going to die. And then God made foods that it's not to fulfill a lack. It's simply God made it to give me pleasure, right? So he says v'chesroinan goes on lechem u'mayim. She'yefshal iskayim b'loyhem. He's not saying that you make a burden of fashas for lechem. He's just pointing out that you have two categories of food. And now, what does that go? What are we adding? Even if there are other things that even if God will not have made them, would not have continuously create them, we wouldn't be able to live. And in other words, we're thinking God on nafashis for two categories of food. Why is the Bartanura saying that? Because according to the Bartanura, when they would conclude the bracha, they would not say the way we say it nowadays, Baruch Chei Ho'ilam. They would conclude the bracha by saying Baruch Atah Hashem Chei Ho'ilam. And you begin the Bayra Nafashis with saying God's name, right? Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. And one of the rules we learned in the Yerushalmi, that why is it that sometimes you just quote God's name once? You only evoke God's name once. And sometimes you have God's name both in the beginning and at the end. So it wasn't about we learned quantitative, long or short. It wasn't that. It's whether there's one or two parts of the bracha. So says the Charedim, both for the types of food that are coming to fulfill a chesaron that we have, and also foods that we don't have a chesaron, but yet God made it and we indulge in the proper way. It's just beyond what we need. Have a bracha rucha. That's how we define the bracha rucha in the Yerushalmi. Not in numbers of how many letters or words, but in content, one topic versus two topics or more. So therefore, o paisachas bebarach and v'chaisamas bebarach kedeisa b'Yerushalmi, right? In our edition on Daf Samach Gimel, shechais memba barach ato Hashem chei ho'ilamim. Okay, back inside the Mishnah. Second topic regarding the second topic in the Mishnah, final topic in the Mishnah is water. So says the Mishnah that hashoisa mayim litzama'oi, if you're drinking water to quench your thirst, and that is implying, as we'll see explicitly in the Gemara, Shmuli, that if you're drinking water not to quench your thirst, if you're drinking water because something got stuck in your throat, if you're drinking water today, you're taking a pill, you're taking a medicine, committing Americans, everything is a medicine, you need to help something swallow down the medicine, that you're not drinking it for your thirst. Then for your thirst, you make shahakol nihiyah. It's for sure a printing mistake with the segel, or it's a real mistake, a worse mistake. It's dafka with the kamatz, as we know, and either Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Tarfan, listen to this, that prior to drinking water, you make the bracha boire nefashis rabbis v'chesroinon. Wow. Okay, and as the Charedim, or really it's all the Bartanura, look inside and towards the bottom already. His version was Rav Tarfon, and he holds you have it before you drink water, and the Ein Halachic Rav Tarfon. What do we paskin like? We all know. Lifneim mevarach sha'akol ulachreim b'nei nefashis rabbis at kan l'shoinoi of Rabbi Vadia of the Bartanura. All right, let's dive into the Gemara. The Gemara is going back to the Reisha of Mishnah. Three-way machlokes tanoim regarding birchas hamazon. For what necessitates birchas hamazon? We have the most limited opinion. You have a Rabban Gamliel that broadens it to any of the Shivas Aminim. And then you have the Shit of Rabbi Akiva, says the Gemara Rab Simon. Really, it's in the name of Rab Tadai. B'shem Rabbi Yoshua. Listen to this, guys. Ochal b'mizracha shel te'ena. If you are eating a fig, not indoors, not under a roof, not in a contained area, you're eating it in an uncovered area, number one. And number two, this will be key. Both are important, not one or the other, but both. When I made the bracha in one location, was I able to see the other location towards where I'm going to be continuing to eat my meal? And if not, I'm under the same roof, nor I made a bracha here, then I went there, but the here and the there are not places where one can see the other place from each other. L'mashal, it's a nice big tree, so it's not about how far you are. Sometimes there's a physical barrier. Can't see because it's around the corner. It was around the tree, the same tree. And now you want to continue to eat the fig, the same fig or a different fig. On the western side of the tree, sarech levarech, you have to make a new bracha. And that is the rule of shinui makayim. Wow, we look inside the Charedim, the last narrow line, the last medium line, going into the widest of lines. So to have a shinui makayim. Now, what happens if I am in my house and I'm washing here, and then I'm going to eat in the hallway? It's in the same house. Much better because they're connected by them being under the same roof. Much better than in the case of Rab Simon, not under the same roof, nor Re'iyah. Now, if you are outdoors and you can see one place to the other, that's also good enough. It's not called Shinei Makom. That's the point. Dafka means you can't see one place to the other. Doesn't matter. And therefore, as the Rambam understood the Gemara, that's the reason why we're bringing you to Eina, because it has both chesroinas, not roofed, not contained in an environment, nor can you see one place to the other. Kavana does not make a difference over here, because your mamash were mashana your makom. Hold on. Okay, I want to take that back. Because again, we know the fact is in Shulchan Aruch that if I wash over here, I can have in mind too. Maybe by a su'udah it's different. Maybe it's su'udah because I have to have more bread. This is a te'ena. I don't know. Okay. No, but the whole idea that people eat outdoors is not so posh. Aside of the fact that Chazal say that whoever's oichel b'shuk is like a kelev and all the other wonderful things. But yeah, you can't just chew a sandwich on the block walking to Starbucks. You can't do that. Okay. Weiter. Says the Gemara. Abba barav huna amar. Now, guys, this is very important. There's so many different ways of learning Gemara. So we're learning with the Charedim. The first statement was Shinei Makom. Now we're going to learn the idea of Shinei Makom applied in a whole new arena. And that is like this. Now, even here, if you'll notice, right, we're in the last line of the Amid. Either the Girsa is Yayin Yashin, Yayin Chodosh, Yayin, very big difference, or it's Yayin Chodosh, Yayin Yashin. And these two Gersois will change the whole meaning of the Gemara. Let me first say it by heart. If the Girsa is, we're going to read this in the Charedim, Yayin Chodosh, Yayin Yashin, Chodosh wine is not as good as Yayin Yashin. Then this topic will already be the intro to the bracha that you sometimes have to make of Hatoy v'Hameitiv. Just to know, Hatoy v'Hameitiv is made whenever a greater quality of wine is brought, even though you already made the Borei Pri Hagafen, according to some opinions, because like we mentioned just a few moments ago, that the bracha of Hatoy v'Hameitiv shetiknu b'Yavne, because of the miracle that Shelo Yisrichu and Shenitan Likavura, it is a reminder of, let's say, of Yom HaMisa. And when people drink wine, if it's drunk properly, there's no greater joy. Yain is misameach, elikim, imagine, be'enosh. And then you have yain hamishtaker, which is the end of the world of the end of the world. And in order to make sure that our drinking is in moderation, that's one svara, especially bringing better wine. Gedenk, hatoy v'hameitiv. Remember that we are going to die and we need God and God does miracles and all of that is to moderate. Or the simple Ma'atoiv is that there's nothing greater than a good cup of wine, but that is only when you're going l'chu'ura from Yayin Chodosh to Yayin Yashin. I want to add another layer. There are some who understand that even the bracha Hatoiv HaMeitiv could be made when you go from better wine to worse wine, because you're not looking at the worst wine, you're looking at different types, variety. The fact that there's variety, the Hashem made wine, and the same wine, you have this wine, you have that wine. Variety can mean different color wine. Variety can mean Merlot to Cabernet. And variety, according to some, is even if it's a lower quality, of a Vinachvi, another type of wine. But we're going to begin with the Girsa, Yayin, Yashin, Yayin, Chodesh. And because of it going down a notch, from better to worse, the first approach will be, we're not talking about the Hatoiv HaMeitiv yet. What are we talking about? The big chiddush of the Charedim. That when you're sitting in the same place, when you change the wine, even when you're going from better to worse, you not make a new Borei Pri Hagafen. Why? The concept of Shinei Makom. Azoy shteit in the Charedim. So let's go. Look, guys, look inside. Yayin Yashin, Yayin Chodesh, Tzarich Levarech. Yes, Danny, you can shake your head out as much as you want. Look inside the second line and the widest lines. I'm reading inside. Yayin Chodosh, Yayin Yashin, Tzarich Levarech. First of all, the Charedim changes the Girsa. He doesn't have our Girsa. His Girsa is dafka going up. Okay? And if you want to see more in the Shino Nuschais, you're going to have all of the different Yain Yosh and Yain Chodesh. He brings so on the Rosh and he brings so on the Mordechai. In other words, Yesh v'Yesh. You have all these different Gersois. Uperushoi, Dani Tzorech Levarech Boire Pri Hagofen. Let's go with the Chareid. And okay, fine. Mask Yain Chodesh to Yain Yoshin. Hatoiv Meitiv we're going to have soon. It's not a contradiction. Here he's saying you have to make another Boire Pri Hagofen. Why? Dumya the Hesech Hadas v'Shinei Makai. Wow. V'chein Evi Yorosh Hagiris v'Perik Basa de Brachas. This is the better pshat. Unlike the others who say it's hatoiv u'meitiv. V'hatam, the key of the shasi yoshin, achar kach, dafka, since you began with good wine, with inferior wine, then you went to better wine, loy mifter b'dechodesh the beidach b'tchila. Why? Because the yoshin chashuv kemin acher legabe chodesh. Why is that? Mishum dishtane leiluyoy, because you upgraded the quality of wine. You make another boire pri agaf. Let's leave it at that. Okay, let's leave it at that. And yes, there are other ways of learning the Gemara, but again, like we mentioned, clear. And by the way, that would make so much sense. When people say Atoiv Umeitiv, it Pasha doesn't flow. Because the first statement in the Gemara was, Achal b'mizracha shel te'ena, v'achal b'marava, you got to make another bracha. What other bracha do you have to make? The same boyer priya eitz. Same bracha. You have to make it again because there was a shinoi. So on this he says, even if you're sitting in the same place, if it's a superior wine, make another boyer priya gaf. Turning to Daf Ayin Amid Beis. Now, let's go with the Chareid. You went from a inferior to a superior. However, if Shinu Yayin, if there is only a change of wine, but it's not different quality, it's the same color and the same age. Okay, that's the key here. I want you to know that you don't have in Chazal, Merlot, and Cabernet. You have red and white. That's a change. And old, the older the better. The older, of course, and if it's not mavushal, not the same thing. Shinu Yayin, but there's no change of color, there is no change of age, then it's the same. Even though it's coming from a new barrel, then Ein Tzarech Levada. And now, physically, Shinui Makim Tzarech Levada. Even if you're having the same wine, mamish, if you change your location, you have to make another bracha. And finally, Siach Datoi, because people normally drink in moderation, so it's very normal for people to drink. And for people to decide, that's it. And then the nudnik on the side, for some reason, thinks it's cool. Oh, have again. Be what he calls chassidish, be a behema, get drunk. So then, and you let yourself be convinced by a bad person. So then, in other words, and that's a rule b'chalam brachas. And then you have to make a bracha again, even though there was no shinoi in the yayin. Now the Gemara relates, Rebbe, al kol chavis yuchavis shoy peseyach, hoy mevarach aleho. Rebbe, every time they open the barrel, we'll make another bracha. Now every barrel, let's go. All these, see, this is all the nuance. Is it Agafin? Now we're going to learn over here, as do the Charedim, that we're talking here about. The Pnei Moshe, I'm sorry, we're talking about the Rebbe had different barrels, either different colors or different qualities. And what's important again, that different qualities doesn't mean dafka that he only went from better to better to better to better. Variety is also a toiv amit. Now we're going to introduce him. He would make a brach. Now Rebbe did not have hesach hadas, and the wine was brought into the same place. So what did he say? Not the way we had until now, the way the Charedim learned that until now we were speaking about the concept of a big change in quality, you make another bread priya gofen. No, Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba b'shem Rebbe, he was there. That's Rebbe. That what? Baruch Ato Hashem l'Eloheinu Chaylam, Hatoy v'hameitiv, Hatoy v'hameitiv, and that's something that people do nowadays. Okay. Question is, we do it nowadays when a superior wine is brought. How do you define that? I don't know.
We also do it with at a meal with other people, not when you're just by yourself tasting wines.
This is not even mentioned here at all. It's amazing. Because we have another rule, Danny, that Shechiyanu, right? We're going to have that on Pede Karoya, right? Shechiyanu, when it's only good for you, right? And Atoiva for others. The Gemara says that in Babel. It's no mention of it at all over here. It's amazing. Now, let's go back. Maise Rabbi Akiva. Sha'asa Mishnah L'Shimon B'noi. Al kol chavius v'chavish oy paseach. V'y mevarach aleh. He would make a bracha. And guys, we are learning as a hemshech, even though the Gemara doesn't say it, the hatoiv meitiv, but he didn't only say that. V'oyman, and then he would say, chamra tova, l'chaye rabbanan u'letalmidayon. We say, l'chayim v'levracha. Others say, l'chayim tovim u'l'shalom. Here he says, chamra tova, that good wine is to add to the life of the Hasidim and the Hasidim wannabes. Okay, next topic in the Mishnah is water. So the Mishnah says, then he makes a shahakol nihiyah bidvarei. So why does this come to exclude? In other words, not all waters demand the bracha. So Amar Rabbi Yoina chutz mimei the karim. The karim waters, as we'll see, the word deked means to pierce. Dakar, we have a family here, right? Piercing waters. Piercing waters, as the Gemara will say here a little bit, as it says, Befedish in Shabbos, that in the Holy Land, in Tiberia, there were two palm trees, two date trees. And there was a spring there. Some people actually called it the waters from the date trees, just where it came out. And those spring waters were so therapeutical that if a person was ill, you would drink it, and it would bring about tremendous amount of diarrhea. A better word, it would cleanse. The cleanse, that's the word today. A body cleanse. If you're drinking waters to cleanse your body, then you don't make a bracha because you're not drinking it for your thirst. That is what we're coming to exclude. Now, Amar Rabbi Yosi, ulachol mayim shutzam elohen. Now comes a big statement. Again, there's so many different ways of learning. Let's go like this. Rabbi Yosi is saying, I agree with Rabbi Yoina that the Mishnah is excluding mei dekarim. That this guy is talking not thirsty. Don't forget, it was a cleanse, not a that we have, the medicine that you pay money that makes you ill more than the cleanse. It was water. It was water that got natural spring water that had this koyach, that it pierced through the gallbladder and it made everything come out of the body and it was very healthy. What happens if a guy's thirsty? Here's David. Now, I need a cleanse. I'm constipated. Nervous then, I'm also thirsty. So the Amar Rabbi Yosi ulachol mayin, that means that even if you're having the Dekarim waters, if you also are drinking it for to quench your thirst, then you have to make a bracha. Now, what bracha would you have to make then? And on that, Amar Rab Avon, no. If you're drinking the waters to quench your thirst, and they also are therapeutical, he agrees that you have to make a bracha. Because you're not only drinking it for therapeutical reasons, but once you have to make a bracha, even here you don't make a shahak. Because since you are also drinking it for therapy, you're drinking it for healing. So Hashoyse made the Koram Mahu Aimer. Yeah, like Rabbi Yosi, you got to make a bracha, but not the shahako. You have to make Shabara make the voice. They come from the Anshik Knesset Agdoila according to Rab Avon. No one is making a brachas. Okay. By the way, when it comes to these waters, so some of them actually, so they're quoted somewhere in a Braisa, and over there in the Braisa, Mesachta Shabbos, Tani either made the Karim, where we are referring to the same word as the word Dakar means to pierce. The Istanoi made the Karim. Waters from palm trees, because Pasha, this is the guys. Yerushalmi was written in Tiberia, Kodesh, in that region. Kavalik, that we started learning it over there, and Pasha, there was no that over there by those palm trees, in the middle of the trees, a flow of water came out, and those waters helped cleanse the body. Mando made the karim. Why did they give it that name? Because they would pierce the gallbladder, right? They would cleanse the body. Mando Amar made the kalim. Physically, that's just a reference point, and that's something that the Gemara Shabbos Kufiyut speaks about. All right, and we're speaking about not two palm trees or two palm trees in Teveri Ira Kodesh, and a good tour guide will tell you those palm trees. Then he would sell you the water for a fortune. and he would cleanse your pocket, 3 different types of cleanses. And on this we say, Hadran Allah, Ketzad Mevarchim, and we have a few more minutes. So I would like to say like this, that before, we're going to just give an introduction to the 7th chapter. We spoke out in our intro to this daf. These are big things that we have to go through. Number one, just to be aware that Zimun, the obligation of Zimun is only when you have 3 people or more that are eating together. We already spoke about the eating together versus tam individuals that happen to be sitting together. We already spoke about that, right? That was the whole thing about when could one person make a bracha for all, or when does everyone have to make their own bracha? So before the Mishnah used the words yoshvin versus heisevu, sitting versus reclining, we're going to just begin as an intro. We're not going to do this again. We're going to go inside first the Charedim. The Charedim, before we read the Mishnah, we'll read the Mishnah next year, is going to quote a big machlokes between Rabbeinu Yoina and the Rosh. How do you define together? Because before we're going to get into the Mishnah, Zimun is only when people eat together halachically. So what will be the question? The question will be is that it's common that when people began the meal, there were, let's say, 5 people here, and in the middle of the meal, other people came along. And they continued the meal, and they're all going to bench at the same time. Are they obligated to be part of the Zimun or not? I'll tell you better. 2 people ate, they washed and ate together. In the middle of their meal, a 3rd person came. If he's considered part of the group now because he continued the meal with them, then you have 3. So that's a machlokes between the Rishonim. The Rabbeinu Yoina holds that eating together necessitates people to be together from the washing until the benching. We're not saying that others are not able to join in answering, but if you need the minimum 3, they're not going to be the 3. You understand? They're called individuals. The Rosh doesn't hold that way. The Rosh holds that even if they didn't begin together, as long as at some point during the meal they are together, now they are mechuber, they are connected. Let's read it inside. Shloishu sha'achlu ka'achas v'chuli, just has a good intro. Chasav harav Rabbeinu Yoina. And by the way, all of this is again the Rav Bartanur, the Rav Avadia. That wachakavu atzman biyachad, that they are affixed. Kavua. From when mitchila lahamoitzi, that, and not only that, let's add in the times of the Mishnah also reclining. I mean, this we're not taking away to what we had a few Mishnayos ago. They have to be washing. They have to be reclining. Lididu bahaseva, and lididon, meaning now that we are over there, wherever they were in Europe, biyeshiva ala shulchan. They're sitting around the table. It means if 3 people are having a shmagas board and they're washing in the dreinzich, there's no zimun. They have to be at least sitting. They can't remain separate. They have to. They're mechuyev to make a zim. But if they were never together from the beginning, then rishoyim lecholek. Oh, good words. Rishoyim lecholek means that they can make a zimun, but they're not mechuyev to make a zimun. They're not mechuyev to make a zimun. And then the linira goes to the Rosh. Okay. I'm sorry. Linira means that the Rav Bartanura is saying kedivrei hamafarshim she'afal pi sheliborcha moitzi biyachad. Still, nikvu lezimun ve'ein rishoyim leicholek. So that's another great second introduction. I want to give a third very important introduction, and that is like this. If a person is eating naan, this is really, actually the third introduction we'll repeat, but just bekitzer, we have another minute, and we're going to make it a little bit spicy for Rabbi Blauner to have to rush. If a person, God forbid, is eating food that's not kosher, a bracha prior he does not make. There is a machlokes rishonim whether they have to make a bracha achrayim, just to be aware of that. The Rambam holds that you don't even make a bracha achrayim. You're not allowed to make a bracha achrayim. It's not kosher. Uveitzeya berech nietz Hashem. One application of that pasuk. However, and the Ravid says that you do have to bench. Even according to the Ravid, if what you ate was not kosher, zimun you're not allowed to make. That's that intro we'll have to repeat. In other words, when people eat food that you cannot be eaten, there's no chiyuv of zimun. And the Mishnah is going to open up by quoting foods that appear not to be food, tamai, v'chulei, and yet you make the zimun. No, the Mishnah is going to go to the edge over here by showing you foods that are borderline not good. They're good enough for you to be chayv to make the zimun, and God willing to be continued. No, eating on Yom Kippur if you're not allowed to eat. If you're not